I've actually been training some of our staff in this over the last few days, so it's really it's really top of mind for me. We have a really different way of approaching remarketing to a lot of agencies, and it's quite unique. And I think when you hear this out, you'll people who are listening will understand the difference of the approach and how it can impact on their business. So, and I'm talking specifically about Facebook here, is in remarketing campaigns, traditionally you'd have one campaign which would get people to consume content and possibly click to the landing page, and then you'd have a separate campaign that focuses on anyone that visited the page or the website, and then that would have a much more direct call to action. So to be sort of, the equivalent of, you visited our website, why haven't you filled out the form? Go and fill out the form.
Yeah.
And that, when you talk to people who do Facebook remarketing, that's really what they think about. They really think about, what's the purpose of the remarketing? Close the deal. And we have quite a different approach. I mean, that can work in some circumstances, but the first thing we do and say is, what is the core purpose of the remarketing? What do we want to get out of the remarketing? This is something that, Peter, you and I have worked on for quite a while, and one of the key things is we want people to know, like and trust the organisation, whether it's an education organisation or a business, and believe that they can get what they want out of it.
Yeah.
And so one of the purposes of remarketing is to get people to consume more of the content so they believe more of the story, so that they then go through and complete the transaction. Now, you're not going to get that if the remarketing is like an image ad that says go through and fill out the form.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing as well. When you look, I guess for me, where this philosophy started stemming from originally is know, like and trust, or another way to say it, they've drank the Kool-Aid, a little bit crass, but fitting, I think. Having someone engage in your content is different from seeing an engagement in a platform. That's just a number, that's just a metric, it's not a real human being. And having someone actually come to the conclusion that your college is right for for them, is more than just an image and a couple of words, go do this. It's actually educating them on why you're the right opportunity for them.
Yeah, that's right. And so if we think about what our expectations as a college or an education institution, you can think through what happens in the sales call and the kind of discussions you have in a sales call, and think about how do you move a lot of that proof that you have in the sales call into the platform and into the engagement, so that by the time they book in a call, they already know who you are, they already trust your organisation, and they trust the heroes of the organisation. And so typically what we're thinking in remarketing, and this is where it's very different, is how can we get them to consume people who we already know are interested in your course? Because bear in mind, like at the front end, we're already targeting conversions, so we already know that these people are actually interested and they're in the market. So what we're trying to do in the remarketing is to get different forms of content in front of them. Now, that content can vary, and often it depends on what's available from the school.
Yeah.
Like what sort of content have you used in different campaigns, Pete?
Well, I mean, obviously the glaring obvious one is testimonials or case study type content. If you've got testimonials that are genuine and real and great, there's no easier way to convince someone that your college is great by them listening to someone else say, yeah, your college was great, so that's certainly one way. The other way is alleviating some fears. The real people behind the sort of bland website with the bland old stock images, if you know what I mean, like running around the office with a little bit of a meet and greet around with the team. It's definitely had a bit of magic along the way for a lot of our colleges.
Yeah, and I usually use the S.A.L.T framework, which is just a really good way to be thinking about the content that you're going to produce, particularly for remarketing. And the S.A.L.T framework is your social proof, and as Peter mentioned there, we've already got the video testimonials. Your authority. So how do you build the authority of the business? and the authority of the school, and in terms of you're a leading provider or you can deliver because you've been approved by X or whatever that authority build is for you. Your teachers are super qualified. You've got all of this. Your grads go on and become X. So you've got authority, so social proof, authority, liking. So what Peter's talking about there is kind of like introducing people to the real people behind the business so that they're starting to sort of feel that this is a place that they're going to enjoy studying at, or they're going to get what they want out of it. And then trust. And trust is kind of like this combination of factors. Can you build trust in the brand and the organisation? And so some of the formats of video content that we've used in that, and it's not just video, but video's always better, like always. The video testimonial, the meet the staff, there's the sneak peek, which essentially is let's give them a sneak peek of what some of the course content is about. So if we're talking online courses, that can be little sneak peeks into what's provided in the online course. If you think of all these different formats of content, you can start to address objections and concerns. So if you think back to a traditional structure of a sales call and go, what happens in a sales call? We address these objections. And you start in your remarketing, you can start to address the objections before the objections have even arisen. And that's really sweet.
Yeah.
Because the whole purpose of this is you get these prospective students warm enough so that when the phone call comes and the consultant or salesperson is talking with the student, they've already kind of consumed a whole bunch of this content. They really believe, and they kind of know the content of the course. They know they trust the authority of the people who are delivering. Then the sales and the conversion becomes a lot easier. For us, that is as much the function, because we're talking about remarketing here, as much the function of remarketing as getting them directly into the funnel and getting them to complete the form and move forward. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be in there. Of course, that should be in there. In your remarketing mix should be direct calls to action. Often they work better with image-based ads rather than video, because we find image-based ads drive action. But what we know is they drive action after they've already consumed content.
Yeah. That's an important thing. You've got to look in the overall journey, the overall student journey. And I guess the image kind of advertisements and that definitely get people to do something because they're not distracted. It's like it takes a few seconds to click the button and go do what you want them to do. The content of a video, just the absolute power of a personality that can come through, can just really get those defense barriers down in a way that you could never do in a way that was significantly harder to do.
That's right.
With words on a page,
If we understand the purpose behind it, then one is we can be smarter about the creative. And like when we're sitting down with our clients and we're sort of working through what needs to happen in remarketing, one of the questions is, what content do we already have? Like let's pull up the content you've already got, and often that's the starting point. And then finding the gaps in the content and going, what you really need is to go off and do some Zoom interviews with some of the ex-students and let's create some content that's going to help us with the remarketing.
Yeah. And another thing that kind of comes with that approach is the implicit versus explicit objection handling. Explicit objection handling is when you say to me what the objection is, or don't perhaps, but I directly try and convince you that you're wrong. And defense barriers are up always as soon as I'm trying to be convinced to do something or convinced to change my worldview, and I can see it. An implicit way of, without spitting, an implicit way of overcoming an objection is addressing it while it's not in their mind, and telling it through a story or through a case study, and that way the defense wall doesn't get an opportunity to come up, and they are more willing to accept or at least consider the alternative to what their worldview might be. So if you're doing an interview with a previous student, the overall angle of that interview isn't necessarily enroll in our RTO or in our college or whatever. It's rather tell us about what your life is like now that you're a qualified XYZ.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the person who's then telling them all about what their life's like is like, by the way, these people were great, and I'm so happy that I went there, and blah 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 blah. You don't even need to be as explicit as I've just been then, but it's just, if this person's successful and they went to this RTO or this college, then maybe I should go to this RTO or college.
This is the big picture stuff, and it's really all about what is the content and the creative we can use in the remarketing. There's then some really specific technical stuff, like when we set up the campaigns, one of the objectives for us is to get multiple pieces of content in front of people, and there's a whole bunch of technical challenges around how you can rotate through content. We see time and time again that the Facebook algorithm will like pick out its favourite piece of content and just serve that content up multiple times to everybody, and it'll start to, just ignore other content that you've produced. And that's based on the feedback loop that the algorithm has. So if the algorithm feedback loop is being optimised for a conversion for someone to fill out a form, there may be a favourite piece of content that gets people to fill out forms, and typically and often that is image-based ads. And the reason is, as Peter was talking about before, image-based ads can be high converting when they're really at the end of the funnel. And that's because all the hard work, all the hard lifting's been done by the videos. And then at some point someone sees the ad and says, oh yeah, I remember those guys, they are amazing, I watched the video. Like, that's not happening consciously, it's happening subconsciously.
Yeah.
But all of that's come out to play, and they've seen you and they've seen your brand, and now they're ready to take action, and the image ad performs. Facebook algorithm says, oh, these image ads are really good, I'm going to serve everyone these. So we go through this technical setup in our campaigns. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but it can either be done serially or through forced rotation. But essentially, we push back against the algorithm and say, no, we want our prospective students to have seen teacher stories and to have seen 3 or 4 testimonials, and we can start to sort of use the technical information that we can get from the Facebook platform. Now, if you're not deeply involved in the platform, there's a bunch of stuff in there that different ways to do this, but literally we can look at the difference between reach and impressions and how many times an individual has seen different pieces of content.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like really cool in terms of how we build out the campaigns. Now, I'm not going to get in all the technical details of that. And to be honest, the guys that work with us in the team, the Facebook experts, know that stuff way better than we do as the strategists. But really, we're sitting down with them and saying, this is key content, we need to make sure people are seeing it. And having a strategic overview of the campaign, so that we're not just saying, just jam leads in there, just jam leads in there.
Yeah. Jamming leads is good until you run out of leads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also we're mindful of lead quality. So we're always kind of like going through this balancing act with leads between, often we'll start with really focusing on lead volume, and then we'll look at ways that we can warm the leads and use the platforms and the content marketing and remarketing that we're talking about here, and to balance that trade-off between, between lead quality and lead volume. And to be honest, that's really a discussion often with the business owners, and in terms of how they want to manage this. Like, is yours an education institution which is really well set up with a sales team that can really manage lead volumes? Like, we have some clients that have got 3 or 4 salespeople, and they are smashing through leads, and they've got an awesome process on the back end.
Yeah. Some clients that can handle literally, what would that be? Maybe 3,000 leads a month?
Yeah, exactly. And they're going through that process, and they've really nailed it. And then we've got other clients that are less focused on having a volume-based sales team, and more focused on we want to see higher quality, and we'll kind of like talk through that process with them. And this is how you do it. We talk about the multi-step processes in lead capture. This is sort of straying away from remarketing, but it's come up. You can have the best of both worlds. That's the cool thing in terms of how we approach it.
Yeah.
You can have a lead capture on the front end that catches the minimal, and then don't throw it away there. Take them through to the next step, warm them up with video on the thank you page, collect further details so that you can have different levels of lead warmth. Often we kind of have class leads, so we'll say to our clients, well, we'll get you A-class leads. These are people who have been through a bunch of qualification, and then we'll get B-class leads, which are kind of like lower level leads.
Yeah. And
I think the key there is a lot of education institutions I've seen do this, where they do the old lead magnet, quote unquote, and then they never get any sales out of it. I remember having a sales call with someone who was doing this, and they're saying, oh yeah, we're doing these awesome lead magnets, and people would get the free download, and I'm like, oh right, do you call them? No. Oh, so what do you do? We send them an email. How's that working for you? Well, why do you think I'm calling you? This potential client was talking me through their approach, and I was like, I couldn't take them on because we had a client in exactly the same industry, directly competing with them. Yeah. And when I heard their lead volumes, I was like, we're just smashing it for one of our clients. And taking a much more direct approach. Yeah. And I'm not saying that you wouldn't kill off lead magnets altogether, but you need to think carefully about how lead magnets work for you. Like if you're doing a downloader prospectus, what the hell happens next? Yeah. Like what is the next action for that? Yeah. Are you actually going to call these people? Because if you can get a call happening, of course, you're way more likely to.
There's a bit more going there that we might be getting a bit too technical. If people know that they're going to be called and they're still filling in the form, it's actually sending a stronger signal to all the artificial intelligence for the way that we do our sort of optimization. By removing the call to action from download prospectus and into a sort of inquiry where it's understood that it's going to be an inquiry, then you get rid of downloaders. Downloaders are often not actually potential students. Downloaders download. Oftentimes half of the downloads you're getting are from perhaps competitors or just general digital marketers and the like. When you're actually optimizing for a phone call, your competitors are less likely to fill in the form. Digital marketers that are nosy, like myself, are less likely to complete the form. Therefore, less data back to the algorithms. The algorithm goes in the right direction, finds actual, genuine, real potential students. Well, more anyway.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I mean, and part of that is whether it's downloads or whether it's content in the platform. The content needs to perform the purpose of self-selection of the right people. And we talk about this a lot. Like we've seen people get amazing traction and viral sharing on content that has no use to them in terms of actually getting students that they need to have.
Yeah. What is that? Can you just expand?
We've seen this with education institutions in entertainment kind of industries, like in drama schools and in music, where the content that is produced is sort of like the output of the final student.
Yeah. So if entertaining content.
Yeah. So if it's a music school, it could be, here's someone that produces an amazing piece of guitar work, or we've seen that in film production where the output is the actual shareable film content. Now that's great, but both of those pieces of content are viewed by a very wide audiences that love guitar or love music. I tell you what, I watch a lot of film reviews in my YouTube channel, but you're never going to sell me a 3-year film course, right? And it's the same with music. There are tons of people that love music and play guitar, but they're never going to study it professionally. So how are you creating content that's going to find the right people that want to take on the course? Yeah. Wow, we've strayed so far from the hardcore remarketing here, but I think this is kind of like understanding the purpose of the content in the platforms, the purpose of content in your remarketing. Is kind of critical. What are the takeaways for this, for potential, for education institutions?
To do your remarketing, you got to think further ahead than just a call to action, come back and finish your enrolment. Actually have a sequential or semi-sequential way of getting people to know, like, and trust you. The actual S.A.L.T framework of social proof, authority, liking, and trusting, and implicitly rather than explicitly overcoming objections and fears and anxieties that they might have about your university, your college, your RTO.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And I suppose the second part for me, don't always trust the algorithms. And so you need to be thinking really smartly about how you use the Facebook or the Google algorithm, because sometimes, well, they always give you what you ask for.
Yeah.
Right? So you've just got to be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
Because what you're asking for here really is more and varied content consumption, and it's pretty hard to tell them to do that without a fair bit of little manual configuration on that.
Yeah.
So, you could always talk to an agency about how to do that.
Maybe they could talk to us. I would say it was a pleasure, but I don't want to be known as a liar. All right, well, an honour, a privilege.
Thank you, Peter.
Take care of yourself, mate.
Cheers.